My niece threw her drink on my birthday outfit, and the whole table burst out laughing. My own mother smiled. My sister didn't even flinch, let alone apologize. Then my 17-year-old niece locked eyes with me and said, "Now you look as cheap as you really are." The restaurant went dead silent. Everyone braced for tears, outrage, a scene. But I just smiled. They had no idea what I'd discovered that morning. They had no idea the credit card my sister had been swiping for years, funding her designer bags, her spa days, her emergencies was tied to my name. And while they toasted my humiliation that night, I made one quiet phone call that rewrote everything. The next morning at 7:50 a.m., my niece woke up to a reality she never saw coming. Before we go further, hit that like and subscribe. And tell me, where are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments. I love seeing how far this story reaches. Now, let's get into it. My name is Olivia Carter. I'm 29, a marketing designer in Seattle. For most of my adult life, I was the family fixer, the one they called for last-minute favors, emergency payments, bill coverage, or cleanup duty on messes they'd made themselves. For years, I told myself that's what family did. I grew up believing love meant showing up, even when no one showed up for you. I wore my reliability like a badge of honor. I thought if I kept giving, kept forgiving, kept swallowing my pride, eventually they'd see my worth. But I was wrong. My older sister, Jessica, was the golden child, outgoing, magnetic, the one my mother couldn't stop bragging about. I was the quiet one, the worker, the one who figured things out alone. No one called me special. No one celebrated my sacrifices. They just expected more, because they knew I'd deliver. Her daughter, Emma, was cut from the same cloth, confident, sharp, charming when it suited her, but she'd also learned early that her rudeness got laughs, her cruelty got excused as youth, and my reactions got dismissed as oversensitivity. For years, I quietly bailed Jessica out. Rent when she lost her job, school supplies for Emma, car repairs. I never announced it, never asked for thanks. I just did what I thought a good sister would do. But somewhere along the way, my kindness stopped being appreciated and started being assumed. That's why, on my 29th birthday, I decided to do something different. I bought myself a beautiful dress, booked a table at my favorite restaurant, and invited the people I thought mattered. I remember standing in front of the mirror that evening, actually proud of myself for once. I had no idea that by the end of the night, that dress would become the thing that finally made me stop being a doormat. When I arrived, I honestly thought this might be one of those rare nights where I could just enjoy myself. Candles flickered on the table, flowers sat beside a birthday card, soft music played. For a moment, I felt hopeful. Maybe this year would be different. Maybe my birthday wouldn't become another reminder that I was always the giver, never the receiver. But within 30 minutes, the cracks showed. Jessica barely asked how I was. My mother dominated the conversation with Emma's latest triumphs, her grades, her popularity, her charm, and Emma sat there scrolling her phone, throwing me small smiles that never reached her eyes. Then she looked at my dress. "Is that really what you chose to wear for your birthday?" The table went quiet. I forced a laugh. "I like it," I said. Emma tilted her head. "It's just, I thought you'd wear something nicer. You're always saying you're doing so well." I felt heat rise to my cheeks but let it slide. I'd gotten good at letting things slide. Minutes later, the waiter brought drinks. I was mid-sentence with my mother when cold liquid splashed across my chest. I froze, looked down. My entire outfit was soaked in a dark, spreading stain. Emma's glass, empty in her hand. The restaurant seemed to hold its breath. I looked up, expecting shock, an apology, someone to say, "Emma, what did you do?" Instead, she stared at me and smiled. "Oh my gosh," she said, "now you look as cheap as you really are." I couldn't process it. My own niece, on my birthday. But what stung worse was what came next. My mother glanced at my ruined dress, then at Emma, and laughed. "Olivia, don't be dramatic." She was just joking. Jessica didn't apologize either, just shrugged. "You know how Emma is." That was the moment something inside me cracked open. Because it was never about the drink. It was never about the dress. It was about realizing the people across from me felt safe hurting me because they thought I'd always forgive them. I scanned the table, took a deep breath, and smiled, not because I was fine, But because for the first time, I knew exactly what to do, I stood, grabbed my bag, and walked out of my own birthday dinner. Back home, I didn't cry. That surprised me most of all. A few years earlier, this would have destroyed me. I'd have replayed every word, begged for scraps of validation, tried to figure out how to be better. But that night was different. I stood in my bedroom, staring at the stained dress draped over a chair, and finally understood something I should have grasped years ago. I wasn't hurt because of a drink. I was hurt because I finally accepted that my family didn't see me the way I saw them. To me, they were everything. To them, I was a resource, someone to call when things got hard, someone who'd quietly clean up the mess and ask for nothing, and I'd allowed it for far too long. For years, I'd helped Jessica in ways no one knew about. Rent when she was jobless, Emma's school fees, car repairs. I never told my mother, never told friends, never expected thanks. I believed family helped each other, but somewhere along the way, help became obligation. Jessica stopped asking. She just assumed. The worst part? I barely noticed how normal it had become. I had a separate credit account I'd let Jessica use for emergencies. It started as a safety net when she was struggling, but over time, that net became her lifestyle: dinner reservations, shopping sprees, luxury splurges, nothing to do with emergencies. I saw the charges. I ignored them. Every time I thought about confronting her, I convinced myself it wasn't worth the drama. So I stayed quiet. Until my niece looked me in the eye and sneered. Until my mother defended her. Until I walked out of that restaurant. That night, alone in my apartment, I pulled up the account statement. For the first time, I wasn't looking at it like a sister. I was looking at it like someone who finally respected herself. And what I saw made my next move crystal clear. I wasn't going to punish Jessica. I was going to free myself. I wasn't trying to punish my family. I was simply done subsidizing people who didn't value me. And before I fell asleep that night, I made a choice that would shift everything. I woke up early the next morning and lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying the dinner in my head. Part of me still wished it had all been a bad dream. But the laughter, the sneer, my mother's dismissive glance, it was all painfully real. I padded into my home office, opened my laptop, and pulled up the account one final time. For years, I'd been terrified of this moment, terrified that saying no would make me a bad sister, that setting boundaries would brand me selfish. But then I asked myself a question I'd been avoiding. If I stopped helping tomorrow, would they still treat me the same way? Deep down, I already knew the answer. So I did it. I revoked Jessica's access to the credit account. No angry manifesto, no dramatic speech, just a quiet administrative change and one short text. Jessica, it's time you handle your own responsibilities. I won't be covering expenses anymore. Within 5 minutes, my phone buzzed. Jessica. Then again. And again. I watched the screen light up but didn't rush to answer. For once, I wasn't sprinting to fix someone else's crisis. Eventually, I picked up. Are you serious? Her voice wasn't sad or apologetic, it was furious. She called me dramatic, accused me of overreacting to a little joke Emma made. A joke. That word landed like a slap, because to them, every wound I carried was just a joke. I told her calmly that this wasn't about one night. It was about years of disrespect wrapped in expectation. She laughed bitterly. Wow, Olivia, I never thought you could be this cold. That almost made me smile. Cold? The same people who'd dismissed my feelings for decades were now shocked that I finally had a spine. Then my mother called, telling me I was embarrassing the family, that family supports each other. And that's when I finally said what I'd swallowed for years: supporting someone doesn't mean letting them hurt you. Silence. For once, no one had a retort. And in that quiet, I realized something profound. I wasn't losing my family by setting boundaries. I was finally finding myself. The next morning, I braced for more awkward silence, maybe a few angry texts, then everyone moving on. But I wasn't prepared for what came next. At exactly 7:50 a.m., my phone erupted. Jessica, my mother. Jessica again. I answered, and before I could speak, Jessica's voice crackled with panic. Olivia, what did you do? The confidence from last night was gone. The attitude had evaporated. For the first time, she sounded genuinely rattled. Emma had woken up, tried to use the card for her morning plans with friends, and been declined. The system had finally caught up to my decision. And that's when Jessica realized I hadn't been threatening change, I'd already made it. She launched into blame. I was humiliating her daughter, making people think their family was struggling, causing untold damage. I listened quietly because what she called damage was actually just the moment consequences caught up. For years, I'd insulated them from fallout. I'd paid bills before they became emergencies, fixed problems before anyone noticed they were broken. But every rescue made them more dependent, and every dismissal made them more certain I'd stay. Not anymore. I didn't take anything from you, I told Jessica. I just stopped providing something that was never guaranteed. She went quiet. Then she said something I'll never forget. You're really choosing yourself over your family? I looked around my quiet apartment, the life I'd built alone, and realized how backward that question was. I'd spent years choosing them, their crises, their comfort, their happiness. And no one noticed when I was the one bleeding. Yes, Jessica, I said. For once, I am choosing myself. The silence on the other end told me everything. They weren't angry because I'd hurt them. They were angry because I'd finally stopped letting them hurt me. A few days later, my mother asked me to meet her and Jessica. I almost said no. Every previous conversation had ended the same way, me apologizing, explaining my pain, trying to keep the peace. But this time I went, not hoping for an apology, not expecting sudden understanding, but to finally speak the words I'd carried for years. We met at a small cafe near my mother's house. Jessica looked tired. My mother looked disappointed, not sorry, just disappointed, as if I'd broken some unspoken rule by standing up. My mother opened with confusion about why I was making such a big deal out of one little incident. And that's when I realized they still didn't get it. So I calmly laid it bare. It was never just the drink. I reminded them of every time I'd shown up, every bill paid, every problem solved, every moment I'd swallowed my own feelings because I thought that was what family meant. Then I turned to Jessica. I was your sister, not your backup plan. The table went quiet. Neither of them interrupted. I told them I wasn't after revenge, I was just exhausted from trying to earn love from people who should have given it freely. My mother looked down. Jessica said nothing. Maybe they didn't fully understand that day. But I finally did. Protecting my peace wasn't selfish, it was survival. And sometimes, the hardest person to choose is yourself. After that, things with my family were never the same. And I stopped trying to force them to be. For years, I believed that if I gave enough, helped enough, and stayed patient enough, people would eventually appreciate me. But I learned a hard truth. You can't make someone value you by constantly proving your worth. You have to value yourself first. The months that followed weren't easy. There were moments of doubt, times I wondered if I'd been too harsh, if I should have just let it slide like I always did. But then I remembered how I felt at that birthday table, alone, embarrassed, dismissed, and I knew that going back would mean abandoning myself all over again. So I focused on my own life. I traveled. I surrounded myself with people who genuinely cared. I invested in my career and built a future where my happiness didn't hinge on anyone's approval. Slowly, boundaries became comfortable. Saying no stopped feeling cruel and started feeling honest. My relationship with Jessica grew distant but healthier. No more pretending. No more fake closeness built on guilt and obligation. And eventually, my mother understood that I was no longer the daughter who'd stay silent just to keep everyone else comfortable. Looking back, that birthday wasn't ruined, it was the day I stopped accepting less than I deserved. Because family isn't just about blood. It's about who respects you, supports you, and loves you without making you earn it. And sometimes, choosing yourself is the first step toward the life you were always meant to have.